When we started to do it, it was by accident. My first actually complication was in 2003. I was doing the vertical bone graft with the Gore-Tex membrane for about four years, and I've seen a case when there was like a minimal infection with like 2-3 fistula tracts. No pus. It came after about 3 weeks, and we decided to go back and remove the membrane. When we removed the membrane, a superficial area and one area, localized area of the bone graft was grayish, it came out. The rest of the bone graft was sitting in the blood clot, almost talking to us not to take it, don't take me out. And so we listened to the bone graft, and we just placed a collagen membrane on top of the bone graft. We didn't fixate the collagen membrane because the bone was already fixated by itself, but we thought we were going to lose the whole thing. And actually we did not. So then we realized that, number one, we don't need a non-resorbable membrane for everything. Number two, probably we need a fixation of the membrane for the first couple of weeks only. And so we started to do smaller cases and then bigger, and then a lot of like posterior mandible, posterior maxillary cases, like completely knife edge, even cases when there was just a cortical plate of bone, and we were like growing even with our kind of like first generation sausages, which was not so perfectly done, about 5.5 millimeters of bone gain. And so that was a lot, so because most patients are enough with 5.5 millimeters of bone gain. But there was a couple of limitations. Number one, sometimes we started to see bone, not on top of the crest, but a little bit more below. So we said, okay, then how do we change that? Technically, we started to push up. We call it the push-up, okay? So at one stage of the sausage, we push up the bone graft, and then we lock down. So that was already better. Then the second limitation was that sometimes you have a very narrow ridge, you have a distal, let's say, canine, you do the whole mandible, and the first premolar is not wide enough. And then it becomes like so wide you can place a buck on a lingual implant. So then we came up with the third generation of the sausage. In these type of cases, when behind the last tooth is really narrow, then usually we do the sausage, and then the mesial pin we started to remove, lift it up, and like the butcher, fill in some more bone graft until it really looks like a sausage anteriorly, and then we hold it down. So then we solved that problem. And then I started to do I had a couple of resolved maxillary cases. And I didn't want to take patients to hospitals to do any extra oral bone harvesting and things like that, and I would not feel comfortable with that. And we started to do guided bone regeneration for those. And then we ended up with the sausage. So we do now resolved maxillary cases with bilateral sinuses and 2 collagen membranes, and place implants have a fixed restoration. So I think the limitations, but the limitation is vertical. Horizontally, there's absolutely almost no limitation.